released in the morning Pacific time, according to Associated Press and NBC News, the Washington desk. President Donald Trump on Wednesday signed an executive order that requires banks to take a closer look at the citizenship of their customers, a new measure in his administration's push to clamp down on people living in the country illegally. The order directs bank regulators and government departments to look for signs that people without legal status are opening accounts or obtaining loans or credit cards. However, the order is less aggressive than banks had expected, as earlier reports suggested the White House was drafting an order that would make collecting customers' citizenship information mandatory. In the order, the White House framed the decision that banks would face credit risks if one of their customers were deported and any loans no longer be repaid. The White House said it would not permit risks to our financial system posed by the extension of credit or financial services to the inadmissible and removable alien population. Since banks have never collected any information about their customer citizenship or immigration status, there are no reliable public figures on how much risk these customers pose to the financial system. A study by the left-leaning Urban Institute estimated that between 5,000 and 6,000 mortgages were issued to customers with individual taxpayer identification numbers, also known as ITINs or ITINs. These ITINs were typically used by undocumented workers in place of a social security number. The Urban Institute estimated that banks were highly reluctant to lend to individuals with ITINs. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are also generally reluctant to insure mortgages for borrowers with an ITIN, making it less likely for ITIN holders to obtain a mortgage. The White House has been signaling for weeks that it was planning some sort of executive order that would involve how banks handle their undocumented customers. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said last month that there should be stricter rules to open bank accounts. Why can the unknown foreign nationals come and open a bank account? Bessent said, claiming bank executives were supposed to know your customer, he asked. So how do you know your customer if you don't know if they have illegal or legal status, whether U.S. citizen or green card holder? In response, the banking industry has been aggressively lobbying for months to stop the White House from issuing an executive order that would have made collecting customers' citizenship status mandatory, arguing it would be expensive and require vast amounts of paperwork. Since the order only offers guidance to the banks instead of a mandate, it appears the banks were able to win over the White House. Immigration advocates have previously said any order that would order banks to collect citizenship information would likely result in undocumented immigrants moving out of the financial system, increasing the number of unbanked individuals. The White House has taken other measures to discourage undocumented workers from using the financial system. The Treasury last November announced it would reclassify certain refundable tax credits as federal public benefits, which bars some immigrant taxpayers from receiving them, even if they file and pay taxes and would otherwise qualify. Tax experts said immigrants brought to the U.S. illegally by their parents as children, known as Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals or DACA, recipients and immigrants with temporary protected status will be largely affected by the planned change. So this executive order is basically trying to discourage those who may not have a social security number because they are here under different circumstances. Maybe they didn't get inspected, what they call inspection at the border. They didn't come in, quote unquote, the legal way, from having any banking access or being able to take out a loan to buy a house or start a business. And also, this is trying to address, I guess, the fact of the matter that after people are deported, who's going to take a loss? The banks are stuck with that debt. If someone is deported out of the country and they have a $500,000 balance on their mortgage for their home, who's going to pay that? The house is gone. Maybe the spouse is stuck back here, or maybe the children, but the person whose name is on the mortgage has been deported. And so either there are going to be foreclosures on the property, or it just leaves the issue of who owes the money, the debt obligation, wide open, and the banks would have to assume the risk. Granted, they could take credit write-offs, tax write-offs, but still it's a loss all around. But this is trying to also make it harder for people to bank at your Chase, your Wells Fargo, your Citibank, your Bank of America branches, your Santander. So we have to keep mindful. And so that means that as someone who used to work in banking formerly, that means that this might be a question now when you go to open an account. What is your status? Or they will track on the back end and not say anything about whether this person is submitting an ITIN number versus a social security number. There might be a differentiation there. But needless to say, I interpret this as a push towards or against people who are not 100% legal as banking. And then you have to pay attention to the fact that they're trying to label it. So that means that there may be a differentiation between those who are US citizens, those who are green card holders, those who are visa holders in the banking system now, whereas there was not before.